Thank you. So good morning, folks. My name is Jody Rao. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Senior Programs Manager here at the Seattle-King County Coalition on Homelessness. This is our annual Helping Students Experiencing Homelessness / McKinney-Vento 101, where we bring in a lot of experts in this field to share an understanding of what that federal law is, what it requires of school districts, and then resources for helping to navigate the students that you're supporting to get the fullest, best, most high-level educational experience they can have. The coalition, if you're not familiar with us, we are a member-based organization. Many of you on this call, your organizations are dues-paying members, and that is a huge, huge support for the work we do, which is a lot of policy and advocacy, and really working for good investments and evidence-based solutions around homelessness, housing, and anti-poverty measures. So we're happy you're here with us. We've got, I believe that we may have already sent some of the slides in a reminder email, and if not, you will be getting those after the fact for sure. Tim writes up an excellent blog. We've invited about 6 different agencies that are able to join us to talk about the work they do in relation to students experiencing homelessness. So we're going to be together for about the next 2 hours. If you do not want to be included in the recording, just simply stay on mute. You can throw your questions into the chat. We will be monitoring that as we go. I see someone has already enabled closed captioning. That's wonderful. You can change your little Zoom box to add your pronouns, to add your agency. Keep introducing yourselves into the chat. We love that. Additionally, again, if you want to be on camera and show your beautiful faces, we love that. That will not include you in the recording. It's only if you come off mute to speak, then it'll either be your name in the Zoom box or your picture or your face, depending on if you're on camera or not. So an overview, we are going to spend a little bit of time, probably not quite an hour, really, with Kayla Blau, Sammy Iverson, and Tim Marshall going over, sort of an overview of the McKinney-Vento law. We've got some resources to share that will deepen the information that they're sharing around some toolkits and partnerships and a little video. And then we're going to spend about an hour with folks from Teen Child, Bright Sparks, Belong Partners, Youth Care, Candelia, which I may be pronouncing incorrectly, and I apologize, and Friends of Youth, really giving us an overview of how they're working with young folks and students, and how you might be able to refer to them and the services that they offer. So that's what the day is going to look like. We have time for questions. We've got time for comments. We've got time for scenarios, and if we don't have the deepest, bestest, most on point answer, we will certainly find it for you. So that's where we're going today, folks. So on that note, actually one more note, we have a post-training survey, and we really appreciate it when folks take the time to complete our post-training surveys. This is something that really does help us refine our trainings, make sure you're getting what you need, that this is a good use of your time, because that's what part of what the coalition is here to do, is here to support the providers that are out there doing the amazing work that you're doing. We want to make your lives a little easier, give you the information you need, and those post-training surveys really do help us do that. So we look at them, Tim analyzes them, we throw it into our training conversations, and it helps us plan for next year. So we got pretty good feedback on our format last year, which was a little bit of that didactic and then jumping right on into resources and networking and community. So really, really happy you're here. So Kayla Blau is an MSW and a facilitator with Belong Partners and a consultant for various nonprofits, including the Coalition on Homelessness, thank goodness. She's worked in social services for over a decade and previously worked for Seattle Public Schools McKinney-Vento office, and Kayla uses she, her pronouns. Sammy Iverson also uses she, her pronouns, also Master in Social Work, and she leads Building Changes work in education and student homelessness. She's worked in social services for over a decade and was previously a McKinney-Vento liaison. And then Tim Marshall has a master's in Public Administration, Policy Administration. Thank you. Okay. He is the Member Services Coordinator here at the Coalition. We are super lucky to have him. He was a McKinney-Vento student in his last year of high school and is also familiar with McKinney-Vento program administration and funding due to research for his undergraduate research thesis. He's passionate about building solutions for youth experiencing homelessness, especially unaccompanied minors, and he loves working with providers who work tirelessly to serve them. So we are really, really lucky to have these three folks here. So I am going to hand it off and start sharing my screen and go on mute. So I think, Kayla, are you kicking it off for us?
Yes, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for being here. I can tell just from what's in the chat that we have lots of experts in the room. So please feel free to come off mute, add your expertise, pop in with questions. We would love to hear your voices or, read your comments in the chat. So please feel free. And we would just like to start off with, we can go to the next slide, please. With acknowledging that we are on the traditional lands of the first people of Seattle, the Duwamish people, past and present, and honor with gratitude the land itself and the Duwamish tribe. And we also have a link that we can put in the chat to a wonderful resource that was recently updated where you can put in your address or the address of the organization you work to see whose traditional lands you're on. And please, as I said, feel free to interact throughout the training. Feel free to come off mute, use reaction buttons throughout, raise your hand, add comments, questions. We would love to hear from you. And just to start us off, it seems like most folks, have some understanding but it's such a spectrum. I know when I started in social services, I had no idea what McKinney-Vento was and was working directly in a shelter with, so I really needed to know that. So we'd love to start with just an intro of how familiar are you with McKinney-Vento resources, just to get a gauge of kind of who's in the room and how we can best support. And for those that joined a bit later, you could feel free to put your name, your pronouns, your job title. You can see who's in the room. Perhaps we can do a scale, maybe like you can put a 1 in the chat if you are like, McKinney who, what is that? All the way up to 5 of like, I'm a pro at McKinney-Vento, I know this law like the back of my hand. All right, we've got some experts in the room, got some folks as learners. Welcome. We are so glad that you're here, wherever you're joining from. And we will start, I'll pass it over to Tim for kind of a basics of the overview of McKinney-Vento.
Awesome, thanks so much, Kayla. So yeah, before we dig into kind of what what rights that a student experiencing homelessness has and how we can get them resources, it's good to just kind of understand like a broad overview of the federal McKinney-Vento Act. It has been around for a number of years, since 1987, and has been authorized a number of times. It is a continuing priority for the federal government to keep it updated so that, I assume based on continuing feedback that youth experiencing homelessness are uniquely vulnerable and need resources provided by school districts in order to achieve academic success. So it provides a number of things for any K through 12 student who is experiencing homelessness and enrolled in a public school district. It provides school access, which is important for nutrition, mentoring, counseling, educational services. We know that schools are essentially resource hubs for a lot of students, students experiencing homelessness and students not experiencing homelessness. So it's important to have access to get all of the resources you would normally get in a school day. It's also important to provide school stability in that it is pretty important and contingent on a student's academic success to stay in the same school as long as they can. High school mobility can lead to lower proficiency in certain subjects, as well as lower the chance of graduation from high school and then continued college. Additionally, it's important to the McKinney-Vento Act provides a lot of supports for academic success. I think most of us know that youth experiencing homelessness have unique needs and therefore need unique supports. I mentioned this already, but like things like mentoring, as well as tutoring, learning spaces. Perhaps a student isn't able to do homework at home, so providing a space so that they can do it at school. And various accommodations to just ensure that they get what they need. The McKinney-Vento Act is also, by design, child-centered and intends to consult with youth on in order to help them make decisions for themselves. It allows you to have a say to kind of like promote empowerment and so that they can make some choices to help with kind of, you know, just advocating for themselves, getting what they want, as well as kind of exercising those advocacy muscles as you move into adulthood. And then one very important piece of the McKinney-Vento program is the appointment of the McKinney-Vento Homeless Student Liaison. And that role, as many of you already know, is basically your point person at any school district or sometimes school that basically essentially like is the point person for a student experiencing homelessness. It is a person that distributes resources. Depending on where the school district is, they can do a lot of other functions as well. If they're in a more rural area, they can potentially provide transportation. They can deliver resources. But their main goal is to be a point person to ensure that students experiencing homelessness get the resources that they need. Next slide, please. So now that we know a little bit about the background of the McKinney-Vento Act, it's important to also kind of dive into what rights that the McKinney-Vento Act affords. A lot of these are common sense, but this is the basic like legal enshrinement of these rights. So when you're advocating for your students, you know that according to federal law, these things must be granted. The McKinney-Vento Act mandates that a student has a right to immediate enrollment without delay to a school that they have been attending. The right to attend that school of origin, which I've already mentioned a couple times. This means that they can't be barred from attending a school if they've been attending there for the remaining days of their, grade education or following years, even if it means that it can be challenging for a student to get there. A school district has the responsibility to ensure that a student gets there. And that gets into transportation a little bit. A school district has the responsibility to ensure that a student gets to school, whether that means coordinating with other students for a carpool, or in some cases, it could mean even that a student has to take a cab in order to get to a school. The school district is responsible for coordinating and paying for that so that a student can get their education. Students have the right to participate in the same programs that they experienced at any other time if they didn't experience homelessness in the past, or if they were participating and then circumstances changed. That means that a school district needs to pay for any fees that would bar entrance into something like band or an after-school program or like AP classes that are normally cost prohibitive for any student, particularly students experiencing homelessness. Additionally, there are some procedural rights that the McKinney-Vento Act affords, one of which is a right to a dispute resolution process. Essentially, this just means that a student has the right to appeal any decision that could bar them from accessing the school of their choice, perhaps from accessing certain amenities that other students can access pretty easily. And that also kind of like structurally, one additional right is that the school district must reevaluate any policies that a student is subject to in order to ensure that there is equitable access and to just prevent discrimination from happening for students experiencing homelessness. And I would like to go to the next slide. I realize also I'm kind of like rolling through these. If anybody has questions about rights of students, responsibilities of schools, or just like anything you want to know about the McKinney-Vento Act, please put it in the chat. And I'm happy to answer, as well as my colleagues, I think, are happy to answer. I do want to dig into, now that we've talked about the rights of students, who is a McKinney-Vento student, who is eligible for programming under the McKinney-Vento Act. It is pretty simple, I think, when you kind of label it as any youth, any K through 12 student who lacks fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. So digging into that a little bit deeper, fixed means essentially not subject to change. This means that if a student is moving from place to place regularly, or ever living in a space that is not meant for habitation, or a shelter, or a short stay in permanent housing and then locating to another place, that is not a fixed place. Regular means that a residence allows a predictable routine. This includes a consistent sleep schedule, meal schedule, some kind of space to like decompress and practice, socio-emotional regulation. And then an adequate residence. This means that it meets physical and psychological needs where a person can, practice just like daily functions, including things that would contribute to a successful education. Can they do homework at home? Can they, can they feel safe in their space? And can it meet their needs? Yeah. So, basically those are, if a person lacks fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence, that's a good way to understand if your student is experiencing homelessness. I will say that many school districts in the past and likely continue to under-identify the number of students experiencing homelessness. So if you're working with a student whose school district claims is not experiencing homelessness, that advocacy is really important, and it can ensure that they access a lot of important resources. We're going on a Department of Education, pretty inclusive definition of homelessness. So we support your advocacy, ensuring that your students experiencing homelessness access their resources, and we hope that school districts do not miscount. Let's go to the next slide, please. And I just wanted to give a note on unaccompanied minors. This is a group essentially that is uniquely vulnerable and would basically be identified as any youth who is not accompanied by a family. These youth are more likely to be LGBTQIA+, and be fleeing situations of abuse or family dysfunction. There are a lot of barriers to accessing a lot of resources for unaccompanied minors, including, there are stricter laws around access to shelter and potentially housing. There is questions, there's been laws passed, but there's still kind of questions with providers about how to provide consent to access medical procedures and medical assistance. So it's important to, I would just say that these youth need your advocacy the most, not that youth with families experiencing homelessness don't. These are just kind of a uniquely vulnerable subset of homeless youth. And then Sammy just shared some really helpful resources that can dig into toolkits and other potentially local resources for unaccompanied minors and other youth experiencing homelessness. We've got the National Center for Homeless Education, as well as the National Association for the Education of Homeless Children and Youth. Quite a mouthful. And with that, I would like to pass it back to Kayla to talk a little bit more about some of the laws passed for unaccompanied minors.
Awesome. Thanks, Tim. And I forgot to say in the intro that just a fair warning that this is a really underfunded mandate, and it's extremely, there's a big need for education around what McKinney-Vento is. And so this is just like a very brief overview. And if you want a kind of deeper dive or to know more about the ins and outs of the laws or different advocacy strategies, there's a link you can check out with some more in-depth trainings throughout the year as well. And to just encourage you to be an advocate for McKinney-Vento with the information that you learned today, to just go out in your communities, whether it's your friends, family, faith communities. If you see a family experiencing homelessness that looks like they might be able to benefit from the program, to with your new knowledge of what McKinney-Vento is and how it can support folks, to please spread the word, because there's as Tim said, it is a really underutilized mandate just because of the lack of information out there. Okay, so back to our regularly scheduled program. Here is a little bit of, next slide, please. There's some laws that came out as kind of a unintended positive benefit of COVID-19, that now a law passed in Washington State where unaccompanied youth can consent to their own primary health care if they're unable to obtain consent from a McKinney-Vento liaison. Which includes immunizations, and they also expanded the law to include medical, dental, and vision services. And a really exciting one is in the past, unaccompanied youth really struggled to obtain ID cards or driver's licenses, because if you've ever been to the DMV, you need to give 1,001 documents, and if you're moving place to place, it's really easy to not have access to those documents. So we're really excited about this law that passed a few years ago, where now unaccompanied youth can obtain state ID cards so that they can work without identifying documents, with the support of a McKinney-Vento liaison. I will say, because it's such a new law, when I tried to go through this process last year with a young person, the McKinney-Vento liaison didn't know about it, the person at the DMV didn't know about it. So it took a little bit of, just having grace and educating folks about what was the new law that passed, and just a few, little bit of paperwork that, we are all very familiar with, all of the paperwork in this field. But then he was able to get that ID and be able to work. So that's a really exciting new law that passed. And we can go to the next slide to just go a little bit more in depth of the school of origin portion of the McKinney-Vento law. So basically, if a student is permanently housed, say in Renton, and their family experienced domestic violence or some change that led them to experience homelessness, and maybe there are no open shelter beds in Renton, so the family has to move to Seattle. The point of the McKinney-Vento law is so that students do not have any interruptions in their educational experience. And so this portion of the law would allow the student to continue in their school of origin, or the school that they were attending in Renton in this example, for the remainder of the school year, and actually all the way until August of that school year, so that if they needed to go to summer school or something like that, they could continue in that school even if they weren't in the attendance area, and obtain transportation to do so. And even if they say then they got permanently housed in Everett and they wanted to continue to go to their school in Renton until the next school year, then they could do that just through August of that year. Next slide, please. So the immediate enrollment, this one is a little tricky because McKinney-Vento by law doesn't define what immediate means. And sometimes that means different things to different folks if they have, 500 kids on their caseload, but it should be without delay, meaning that if a student shows up to a school, say, to a school district and says, I want to enroll, but I don't have copies of my immunizations, of my birth certificate, by law, they are allowed to enroll in that school. Next slide, please. So again, even if they don't have access to their previous academic records, proof of residency, proof of guardianship, birth certificates, if they have outstanding fees at their previous school, none of that, pertains to students that are experiencing homelessness in regards to getting a student enrolled. Once they're enrolled in a school district and fill out a McKinney-Vento intake form, then they can then talk to the McKinney-Vento liaison and figure out what supports they need, whether that's clothing, food, transportation to school, access to mental health resources or other resources. And then at that point, the McKinney-Vento liaison can also help with getting those previously, academic records or their birth certificates, things like that. They can support them in getting those documentation after the fact, but it should not bar a student or a family from obtaining their education. And this is another time I will say, have grace with folks. When I was working at the shelter, I would get really frustrated if students, or families went to a school and tried to enroll and they were turned away. A lot of folks are just doing the best with what they know. And so to just always point back to the law, to the RCWs, that those will arm you in saying, oh no, this student actually can enroll and should be able to come to school tomorrow, even without those documents. All right, next slide, please. Oh, I'll pass it over to Sammy.
Hey everyone, thanks for having us again. I just want to do like a little kind of recap. I love hearing things multiple times, so I'm being selfish in offering that. But so just know, knowing, like paying attention to the chat, knowing who's in the room, McKinney-Vento serves doubled up. Like if you ever are running into a situation where coordinated entry or a housing provider or whatever referral system you're getting folks that are experiencing homelessness to, just remember McKinney-Vento is really both focused on that literal homeless definition that we all know well via HUD, but also is inclusive of doubled up. We see some movement in our state to serve unaccompanied youth and youth experiencing homelessness. So really focusing on young people and acknowledging doubled up is real. But when we look at the numbers across the state, McKinney-Vento in Washington is about like 75% doubled up. So just wanted to throw that in there. And we're kind of just going to transition into this big focus around transportation, which I think for those of you who have heard of McKinney-Vento, that's usually the context that you're hearing it in, like school-based or district-based, and then definitely that transportation piece. So again, you have your McKinney-Vento liaison at your district level that's going to be your point of contact. But what's also unique to Washington State is that we have McKinney-Vento building points of contact, which has been built into legislation to really try to focus services to students experiencing homelessness at the building level. So you have some opportunities in your engagement, if you have not already, to do so at those different levels, building or district. And as we think about transportation, we've talked a little bit about kind of eligibility and these pieces around immediate enrollment. So McKinney-Vento is also tasked with providing appropriate and adequate transportation to the school of origin and really trying to eliminate those barriers that may come along with it. Transportation services should begin without delay, but what I want to stress just from my time in the district is I believe they offer a 3 to 5 business day setup. So what it means is that transportation request is going to get kicked to your district team, your school district department, working specific on that piece. And then is coordinated with a contractor or a school bus or however they decide to route that particular individual. The transportation doesn't always mean that, classic bus that some of us may or may not have ridden to school in. So it can look different. Oftentimes we've seen folks, contract with taxi drivers, things like that. When we go to our next slide, it's just going to really break down kind of those different options of transportation that we've seen. Another stress around this being an underfunded mandate is across Washington state, McKinney-Vento liaisons aren't always full-time positions. So this is kind of another piece, not to say like, please show up and advocate for the young person or family that you're representing, but also know that dependent on the district and kind of the way that they want to prioritize McKinney-Vento is the way that they staff it. So you can see districts that have a 0.25 FTE, so a quarter of a full-time person that's focused on being their McKinney-Vento liaison at the district level, that's tasked with identifying every student that is doubled up or experiencing homelessness. So this is just something to note. There's also districts like, I believe Tacoma was where I worked, but I know that Seattle has a robust team of folks that are really focused and mindful of McKinney-Vento students. So there's a big range. When it comes to just thinking outside the bus, specifically, we know transit passes are a thing. So whether that's a Orca card or a day pass ticket, whatever that could look like. In my past working with young people, that was oftentimes a preference. Just like, I'd like to have control over my own transportation. Please provide that whenever possible. And the McKinney-Vento office is, I like to think across the board, pretty much plugged into that as a resource. However, if you take into account rural districts, that might not be the best option. So paying parents or the family to transport via, it's called in lieu of agreements. What this is specifically mileage reimbursement. So this is kind of an alternative to other transportation like the bus. But say the household has a car, and what makes the most sense is to drive that child to and from. This can be utilized again through the McKinney-Vento liaison, and actually is where the district, dependent on their kind of finance department, allocates a check that's verified after, we know how many miles it takes to and from. So there's some calculation involved, but that's definitely an option. The use of contractors via cab companies. I know that there's a couple different rideshare programs over time, over the last few years, that have kind of tried to bubble up to fill that gap. There's a lot of like licensing issues. So we haven't seen access for McKinney-Vento show up in like Uber or, Lyft, or kind of the main ways that the main alternatives to transportation that we've utilized I've utilized as an adult. But there's still movement there, and just trying to figure out how to provide more and more options. Exploring cooperative agreements and interlocal agreements with other districts, or ESDs, which is an educational service district. That's going to be kind of your regional approach to this school district stuff. These are pieces where, Seattle's close to Renton, or Tacoma's close to Puyallup and Sumner, or, so it's just a way to be figuring out how to share the cost, because again, hitting on that underfunded mandate, this all costs something that the district is tasked to take on. So if there's a way to share costs while that student is transitioning or going to a different district or really staying in their school of origin, that happens as well. And then the last piece is that coordination across community-based organizations, or CBOs. I've seen it happen often with like Boys and Girls Clubs. We'll create these little transportation hubs so that anyone attending or nearby can just kind of have a safe place to gather and be picked up. So these kind of pickup points are going to be coordinated as well through kind of whatever's happening in your local community. It's going to look different, but have been hugely helpful. The next couple slides that I'm going to cover for you all are going to be focused. So Tim mentioned earlier around the dispute resolution process. So we just want to make sure you are aware and plugged into options, right, as you're working with young people and families. If a dispute arises over eligibility, so you're working with a family and the liaison's like, oh, they're not homeless, right? So for any reason, doesn't really offer those McKinney-Vento services. So if you don't agree with that, or the student doesn't agree with that decision, what happens is you can go into a dispute resolution process. And what it means is that that student will still be immediately enrolled and really receive all of the services of McKinney-Vento until that is proven wrong. So like if you decide to basically like initiate a dispute, it means that that student will have full rights to McKinney-Vento. So here on the slide, the student must be immediately enrolled, et cetera, what we mentioned, until that resolution has come. The liaison shall ensure unaccompanied youth are immediately enrolled as well. And then parent, guardian, youth must be referred to the liaison, who will carry out the dispute resolution process as quickly as possible. So a little more into the details with this. This is a lot of text on this slide, but what it really just wants to highlight is that there's like steps in place, and there are things like it goes into like a formal process when you do this, but just always know that that student is at the center of it. So making sure that they are getting what they need from the district if this happens. Just to be totally honest, working in Tacoma, I think we saw 2 disputes happen like in a year. So depending on kind of whether it's lack of awareness or whether, you know, the liaison is really choosing to opt folks in as they always should. So this is really kind of that tool that's like, I'm sensing something's going on here that is basically barring students from having these services they need. This is going to be kind of what you'd want to initiate, or at least support the family to initiate. So as you know, this is going to route through your McKinney-Vento liaison at the district level. And we also have some additional notes that we've added on this part around unaccompanied youth. So just thinking this also applies to unaccompanied youth. And sorry, I got thrown off a little bit here. And then I have a couple links that I want to share too. One link I want to share about this specific process, it's going to highlight at the national level some different examples of what dispute resolution can look like. And there's also an additional resource connected to the Office of Education Ombuds for general support resolving disputes. So Office of Educational Ombuds, also known as OEO, is a place that you can contact if you feel that a student or family you are working with is facing discrimination. That can be on a basis, whether it has to do with housing status, whether it has to do if they're living with a disability. That's another additional way to advocate. And then this last slide was just a final kind of reminder that work's done better together in partnership. It's not asking anyone to do more work, but to really share the work. So there's a lot of power in this collaboration. I know that there can sometimes be challenges involved in that, but when we get this right, being a school system as well as a housing system working together, students definitely benefit from it. Another kind of detail to add here is in 2018, Building Changes specifically did research around students experiencing homelessness and found that 6 out of 10 students experiencing homelessness are students of color. So when we think about opportunities to advance race equity work, advance inclusion, diversity work, this is a place to start, is really understanding how we can be most supportive for students experiencing homelessness. IDEC, or I always butcher this one, Youth Development Executives of King County. They have some really great partnership tools. It kind of really depends on like what your preference is and how you navigate. But if you're someone that really likes organized, like templates and things like that. This is a really cool, the link that's associated with WIDEC, really cool resources. I know that they can do kind of more in-depth support on a contracted basis, but we've worked with them just across our trainings, and there's just some really fun like tips and tricks to understand like maybe how to start a partnership, how to get one going, how to maintain it. The other piece is also definitely worth highlighting, unique to Washington, is we have what's called the Homeless Student Stability Program. It's going to be, comes from our state level general fund and actually drives dollars into school districts and community-based organizations. I will say, as part of my role at Building Changes, I provide training and technical assistance to homeless student stability program grantees. And Wellspring locally was one in our last funding round. So basically that money goes into CBOs as well as school districts to promote that school housing partnership work. And added some additional links in case you want to read a little bit more about that. I do also know that within the next, I believe, 1 or 2 months, sometime in the fall, OSPI will be holding a competitive grant cycle for homeless student stability education funds. So that would go directly into school districts. So if you all know of school district partners that maybe wanting to apply to that, I would just kind of get on OSPI, follow their notifications and know that that's coming. Sorry, I have not looked at the chat, but I did just look over here. And Rogers wanted to mention liaisons are also referred to as building points of contact. Okay, absolutely. McKinney-Vento building points of contact are going to be who is identified in a building level as the like point person for knowing who's McKinney-Vento in that building. But just kind of playing with words, that McKinney-Vento liaison is usually going to be at the district level, but that can be used interchangeably because they're doing similar work. But thanks for bringing that in, Rogers. And then I believe I am passing back to Jody.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kayla, Tim, and Sammy. And I wanted to just go back a little bit further up into the chat. We had somebody that asked the question, what does doubled up mean? And Kayla put a really lovely answer into the chat, but I wanted to actually capture that into the recording. So Kayla or Sammy, if one of you want to expand on what that doubled up means, just for the good of the group and the good of the recording for anybody that's going to come back and listen to this later, I would be appreciative.
Yeah, sure. So doubled up refers to students and families that are living with another family due to economic hardship who are not on the lease. This can get a little bit complicated because usually when folks think of folks experiencing homelessness, they think of HUD, like the Federal Housing and Urban Development definition, which is, literally like living in a shelter or a car or an encampment. The great thing about McKinney-Vento is it expands that definition of homelessness to include doubled up. So if there's a chance that maybe a family is living with their auntie or family friend, and if there's a chance that a landlord can come and say, hey, you're not on the lease, you need to, leave the premises, and they lose their housing because they don't have that stability of their name on a lease or a rental agreement, then they would also qualify for McKinney-Vento. Sammy, is there anything you want to add on that?
Just the last piece I would include with everything Kayla said, co-signing for sure, would be McKinney-Vento is super case by case. So this is kind of where your advocacy can come through. If for any reason you're kind of running against like a disagreement with the school district or the building you're working with, I do like to think for the most part, districts and schools are pulling for students and are trying to do their best at opting in. So this looks very, very different depending on who you are, depending on the culture that you're coming from, depending on your family makeup. So just knowing that doubled up does open up that kind of box of stability. You could live at, your friend's house for 4 months, but if you have no rights to that space, it doesn't mean that you can access, it doesn't mean that you're stable in a lot of ways. So just kind of bringing that up. And then, like I said, everything Kayla said was great.
Thank you for that lovely and wonderful expansion on that. And thank you to the person that threw that question in. And I just want to offer up, folks can raise their hand, come off mute if they've got other questions, comments, throw it in the chat. You know, sometimes we can think, oh, this is a simple question, or, you know, I feel silly, but probably there's somebody else that has that same question. And you also have experts in the room that can unpack what may be seemingly a simple question and give you a few more tips and pointers. So sometimes questions are a nice starting point for deeper conversation. So as folks are, you know, we have a couple more minutes for questions, and if they're on the verge of it or typing, I'm just going to remind everybody that this is recorded. The whole video, the slides, resources, all the links are going to be available after the fact. The video will be almost immediately available on our YouTube. We'll share that link. I will find it at some point, or Tim will, one of us will. And then Tim does this beautiful job of writing up a blog that sort of summarizes what was covered. The links and slides and everything goes into a blog on our website. So all this is going to be available. Sammy just threw her email into the chat to answer any lingering questions. Tim just threw the YouTube in there. And then I'm just going to remind folks that we've got a post-training survey that we really appreciate people filling out. So I'm just going to throw that link back in there. And then I do see a question. For situations in school districts with McKinney-Vento liaisons that aren't working fully year-round, how would you recommend beginning the process for a young person who is hoping to obtain their state ID?
Lauren, this is such a good question. I just have to say that. So McKinney-Vento liaisons oftentimes are off in the summer. That's, you know, per their contract. And when you are identified as McKinney-Vento as a young person or a student or a family, you hold that status from the moment you have it until that summertime. So summertime, it gets kind of interesting because you wouldn't necessarily have that same status, but our friends at the DOL or Washington State driver's licensing places should have awareness of this. So what I would do is I would go in with the young person and say, we need a state ID. I'm working with a student that has been identified as McKinney-Vento. If they were to give any sort of pushback, what should be happening at the district level is someone should be holding that work regardless of the McKinney-Vento liaison being on summer break or not. So if you have to kind of go backwards and find that verification, there will be someone at the district level. In Tacoma, it was in the Title I office. So just kind of figuring out what that office could be. And sometimes there's kickback emails. So just, you know, whether it's getting into the details and kind of annoying, I totally own that, but playing detective for a second. My hope would be that the DOL would just receive you in that way and say, okay, this is what we, you know, you have the whatever is needed to be able to move forward with that. In terms of payment, like, there was a payment involved. The school district, at least that I worked at, was actively involved in covering that. So if cost is somehow an issue, that would also be a reason to kind of lean back on your school district. Some who are kind of head of that game, knowing that IDs are a need, have kind of something worked out between the Department of Licensing to immediately be billed internally. However they do that, I'm not in the finance department, but I know that they have been able to set things up to just make that more seamless. So again, case by case stuff. So there might be some complications that arise, but my hope would be that you as an advocate representing that young person is enough. And if not, just doing a little bit of that Google search via school district online.
Yeah, I would also recommend perhaps reaching out to OSPI for, it was a packet of paperwork that the McKinney-Vento liaison just needed to sign, but perhaps doing all of the, front work of filling out that information with the young person, so that once, you do that detective work that Sammy spoke about, as far as finding someone that perhaps is, the person above the McKinney-Vento liaison on the food chain, or the power structure at the school district while they're out, to sign it in place of them. And also just calling up, your local DOL or DMV to kind of understand or educate them, again, arm yourself with the RCWs that back up that this law is in effect, and just provide some front-loading education so that when the McKinney-Vento liaison is back to sign that paper, or when you find that person at the district that can sign it in lieu of them, that the DMV or DOL will be equipped to give you that ID.
Great, thank you so much. So we are going to, I'm not seeing any more questions coming in through the chat. We're going to move on to our resource fair, which I'm so excited about. And we've got most of the folks here. We have a couple folks that are coming here in a bit. So we're going to, this is kind of the order we're going to go in, which is Team Child, and then Bright Spark, Youth Care, Candelia. And please correct me if I'm mispronouncing it. And then, well, we've got Belong Partners and Friends of Youth that are coming a little later. So we'll slide them in towards the end. The whole point of this is to really make sure that you all are aware of some of the organizations that are doing work with youth, unaccompanied youth, youth that might be experiencing homelessness, and students, and resources that are available to them. This is not an exhaustive list. We reached out to a large number of folks. This was who we were able to connect with and were able to join us today. So we are very lucky to have folks here. There are a lot more, and we can help connect you with other more of those resources if this, isn't quite meeting the need that you think a student you're working with has. So, and if you are on this call and you don't see your organization represented and you do this work, please throw stuff into the chat. We will happily share those resources out as part of our blog. Going forward, you can reach out to Tim or I offline to give us that information. We want to make sure folks have the information. So really what we're looking for is a good understanding. We got about 10 minutes for each organization, and we really are hoping to learn what they do, who they serve, how to refer folks to services and what that eligibility is. And then, maybe 3 takeaways that you would want to provide all the folks on this call with about how to support students experiencing homelessness. So we've got Lauren Rosen, who is a legal assistant from Team Child. And Lauren, I'm going to give the floor to you. Thanks for being here.
Sorry, I'm waiting for my camera to adjust. Thank you. It's really nice to be here and to get to talk to you all, and I appreciate the training. That was really helpful. So I'm Lauren Rosen. I am the legal assistant for Team Child's King County office. We also have offices in Pierce County, Yakima, and Spokane. And then we also provide services to all of the youth incarcerated in JR facilities, as well as group homes. And then any young people who have recently been incarcerated. So like reentry kind of stuff. And then we also have a policy team that addresses more systemic issues that our clients are facing, and a youth advisory board that kind of guides our priorities. So we work with young people ages 12 to 24 in all of those jurisdictions. Basically, our requirements for that is we serve low-income youths and their families. So obviously any young person who is homeless, experiencing homelessness, that would definitely qualify for our programs. So I do all of the intakes for King County, and I'm going to put our online referral form in the chat. This just opened up, so it's a lot easier to make a referral than it used to be. We also have paper copies that people have scanned and sent in and filled out, but we're finding that this is a lot easier. And then I will also put my phone number. And that is the direct way to reach me, to call and make a referral. And then I can also put my email so that people can reach out. Yeah, so basically a big thing about Team Child is we're big into disrupting like the school to prison pipeline, and kind of just helping young people meet these civil legal needs that they might have. So whether it's they're facing discrimination at school, they're not getting special education services at school, they're experiencing homelessness and need help talking to the McKinney-Vento liaison, all of those different kinds of things. And so I would say a big thing for us is just we're here to like reduce legal barriers. We used to do record sealing. Now King County Bar Association takes care of that. But our other offices still do it. And we're also an anti-racist organization and an abolitionist organization. So we are always advocating against incarceration, against school discipline, all those things like that. So I would say a big part too about like legal services we provide is we do a lot of minor guardianships. So we get a lot of young people who are like, I'm living like with my auntie and I want her to be my legal guardian rather than my parents. And so I need her to take over custody of me. So there's the minor guardianship and then an emergency minor guardianship, which can kind of transfer that custody over sooner than the 60 days that the minor guardianship typically takes. So we help file those. We help young people get emancipated when they turn 16. We've had young people whose parents are kind of taking advantage of the money that they make at their jobs or things like that, which obviously can contribute to housing instability and these other issues. Yeah, so I would say doing that with the families not around, like I said, helping talk to the McKinney-Vento liaison at school. And I think, I know I'm rambling a little bit. There's a lot of things that we do. But yeah, that is kind of the gist in terms of how we intersect with young people experiencing homelessness or experiencing housing instability. So if you have a young person who's like, I've been couch surfing for a while, we had a young person who was like, I'm living at my friend's parents' house and my friend's parents actually are willing to be my guardians. And so we help file that over, go to court, do all that kind of stuff. And all our services are youth-led and youth-driven. So whatever that young person wants, we work with them with. So we're not working necessarily with like CPS or DCYF or other types of organizations. Yeah, I'll pause for a second if anyone has like any questions or anything like that.
Great, thank you, Lauren. Yeah, we've got time if there's thoughts, comments, questions for Lauren.
I have a question. The form that you sent, was that it was the training survey link?
Oh,
I wanted to make sure I got
I'm
that
so
the actual
sorry.
form.
I saved that one as well. Okay. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. I was like, I saw a link in my notes and I'm like, it's that, but there we go. That should work. Thank you for bringing that up. And then I'll send our website. So yeah, so basically young people can refer themselves, an advocate can refer them, whoever can refer them. And for King County, at least, like anyone who fills that out, it's going to come to me. Anyone who calls King County, I'm the only legal assistant there, so I'm going to be the one who answers. So that's kind of nice. Yes, we are also a good resource for young people with CHINs and also at-risk youth petitions, if that's another thing. So we can help with that.
And again, for myself and maybe others like me, what is CHINs?
Yeah, so I would say CHINs, honestly, I am not super familiar with. We've only done, I think, like one CHINs since I've been there. So I might not even be the best resource to share about that.
Skylar, maybe
yeah.
you were able to put in the chat what CHINs stands for. It looks like an acronym. And if not, that's okay.
Yes, sorry. So a CHINS is a child in need of services. So it's a youth who, just like Lauren was saying, who has identified a supportive adult, but they want that supportive adult to be their legal guardian or any other legal help that they need like that. And usually LCYC supports it, but it's nice to know other options in case LCYC is overrun with clients.
Yeah, that's a really great point too. I would also say we've had, so the difference, I guess, between like Team Child and LCYC is we don't have that housing instability like as a requirement to be one of our clients. But we've had really great opportunities if we've had like conflicts of interest to share clients with LCYC. So if anyone ever runs into that, sometimes I know with like siblings, there might need to be different attorneys or different organizations. So we're always a good place to call.
Wonderful. And it looks like Sammy also found a link to King County Superior Courts that has maybe a little bit more information on the CHINS. Feel like I don't have enough context to know even how to say that properly. So we're all, some of us are, I would have been a 1 on my scale here at the beginning. Well, Lauren, thank you so much. I believe we're going to have time at the end for more questions if you're on the edge of something or you take a minute to sort of process and think about things like I do. So don't think this was your last opportunity. So thank you, Lauren. Really appreciate you being here, throwing all that information in. I'm going to move to Maggie Hurd, who is the Family Navigation Lead for BrightSpark. And then we'll be moving on to youth care after that. But Maggie, please take the floor. Thanks for being here.
Morning. Thanks for having us. I'm actually joined by one of our family engagement specialists, Jasmine Lopez Ibarra, and we're going to be sharing some information together. Just a moment while I get my screen share working. Okay, can everyone see that all right? Great. Yeah, so I'm Maggie, she, her pronouns, and I'm the Family Navigation Lead with BrightSpark. We have Jasmine with us, who also uses she, her pronouns, and is one of our family engagement specialists working with families experiencing homelessness. And before we get into the services that we offer for families experiencing homelessness, I wanted to touch on some of the other services BrightSpark offers. So this is not an in-depth overview of the services we offer. There's a lot of things that we do in the community. But first and foremost, our mission is to nurture and sustain child-centered and anti-racist communities. And we do that by supporting families and childcare providers across King and Pierce counties. So we offer childcare subsidies and financial assistance for families that are trying to pay for childcare. Help finding licensed childcare providers, partnerships with the Seattle Preschool Program and Early Head Start providers, support for family, friends, and neighbors providing unlicensed childcare, so more informal childcare situations, early childhood mental health services and partner with childcare providers, and then professional development and coaching for childcare providers. And I'll pass it to Jasmine to share some information about our child care subsidy program for families experiencing homelessness.
Thank you, Maggie. So a little bit about BrightSpark's child care subsidy program. This program is meant to be a low barrier child care subsidy program for families who are experiencing housing instability. It was designed to be a bridge for families to connect to long-term supports. It is a program that covers the entire cost of childcare for however many children under the age of 13 a family has in their care. In this program, we do support families with accessing resources like diapers, wipes, clothes, transit passes, grocery or gas gift cards, as well as referrals to other basic needs or services. In this program, we have very minimal eligibility criteria for families They must be actively experiencing homelessness as defined by McKinney-Vento, or be less than 6 months into permanent housing, or be facing eviction. And the eviction criteria is only for a few of our programs, which I'll mention next. Families are also meant to reside in either Seattle, Renton, Bellevue, Kent, or Redmond. And the eviction criteria, unfortunately, is not applicable for the city of Seattle at this time. There's a few different ways to get connected to the CCSP services. First off, we have our intake/referral voicemail line. So the number is 206-329-5544. And at this number, a family or whoever is referring this family can give some basic information on how to contact the family directly, and that call or that voicemail will be followed up with a call for us to be able to complete an intake with the family and see what program the family is eligible for. BrightSpark is also connected with Child Care Aware of Washington, who has a statewide call center. The folks at the call center are incredible. And if you call and ask about services for families experiencing homelessness, they are amazing and will often direct you to us directly, whether that's internally on their end, sending families to us directly, or whether that's them giving information about our program and then sending families our way that way. They're amazing and will always get you connected to the right resources. We also have a subsidy interest form. Again, this is not an application. It's just to get basic information about family, a family situation specifically. And with this form, the family can fill it out directly, or anybody who the family approves to fill that out on their behalf is welcome to do so as well. Again, that's getting basic information of the family, and then we follow up to complete an intake directly with the family. And then lastly, we do have our BrightSpark website that has some resources on different options for paying for childcare.
Thanks, Jasmine. And I'll get all those links and that information in the chat once we wrap up here. Our teammate Hala unfortunately wasn't able to join us today, so I'm going to go over some of the services she provides. She provides assistance with applications to Homeless Grace Period, which is a childcare subsidy offered through the Department of Children, Youth, and Families, so through Washington State. It's a 12-month childcare subsidy that covers full-time childcare with no cost to the family for 12 months. And the families must be experiencing homelessness as defined by McKinney-Vento and underneath certain income guidelines. And what Hala does is she supports families with navigating Homeless Grace Period. So navigating the application process, supporting families with determining if they would even be eligible before they start an application. And there's a few different ways she can help. She can do the applications with families directly, so they don't need to contact DCYF if that's something they're not comfortable with. And she can kind of walk through things a little more slowly than the representatives at DCYF might be able to, and can provide language support and additional support throughout an application process with sending in any documents that the state would need to verify eligibility and things like that. So she says her goal is to help the family secure consistent childcare during the 12-month subsidy period. Hala also works in our call center, so she can support families with navigating finding childcare providers and help them get lists of childcare providers that would accept the subsidy. And she also checks in with families after her initial contact with them. So after 30 days, 60 days, and 6 months, Hala will check in with families to see how things are going and if they need any additional support. Some information on how you can get connected to the Homeless Grace Period subsidy or to Hala for help with an application. Families can apply for Homeless Grace Period online through WashingtonConnection.org. A good thing about applying online is that families also can apply for other benefits simultaneously. So they could apply for TANF or other health insurance, other programs through the state. Families can also contact the statewide call center to get in touch with Hala. or contact HAWA directly at 206-329-1011, extension 332. And again, I'll put all this in the chat once we're done. And then we have our takeaways for families experiencing homelessness. Jasmine, do you want to go with the first one?
Yeah, thank you. All right. One of the big takeaways when serving families experiencing homelessness is creating a program that is low barrier with the enrollment process. As I mentioned earlier, we do have very minimal eligibility criteria, and we try to match that with our enrollment process as well. We require very minimal documentation from a family, most of which is directly signed by them, and we come up with creative solutions if getting signatures proves to be a challenge. But the only enrollment document that we ask outside of the main household we're working with is a third-party verification of housing. And again, we work on creative solutions if that proves to be a barrier for families. We want to be able to assist as many families as possible who are in need of this, this resource. So we strive to keep everything as low barrier as possible.
Jasmine. Another takeaway we had was making sure all decisions and conversations are family-led. So making sure no decisions are made on behalf of a family without their input and with them fully understanding the implications of any decisions and being able to kind of provide information on what they think is best for their family, because every family will know what's best for them ultimately. We're here to support the families, but we are not here to make decisions for them or kind of do things on their behalf without their consent and without their full knowledge. Another takeaway is to provide services as consistently as possible for as long as possible and as low barrier as possible. So things like a full 12-month subsidy offered by Homeless Grace Period is great because families don't need to keep checking in and wondering if they have that. They can kind of put that on pause and not have to think about if they're going to need to follow up to continue receiving resources. We also like to follow up with families ourselves to check in and see how things are going. Usually families are great about reaching out if there's anything they need, but sometimes we're able to support with things that families aren't aware that we're able to support with. So by checking in with families periodically, you get a better idea of how you can support them. And then, that is everything we had. Just you can find more information about all our services at brightspark.org, and I'll put all those links in the chat. If anyone has any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Maggie and Jasmine, for being here and sharing all that. If we have not already asked, is it possible for us to get a copy of those slides? If you could send them to Tim, we'll share those out. That would be wonderful. And just gonna take a pause if there's comments, questions for Maggie or Jasmine and the work at BrightSpark. Okay. They can come later. That's okay too. We're going to do a little switcheroo in our order. We have Portia Anderson, who is the Interim Director of Housing and Support Services from Friends of the Youth, who's going to share more about their programming and the services that they offer specific to youth and students experiencing homelessness. Thank you, Maggie, Jasmine, for putting that information in the chat. And we'll get all those resources out to folks. And Portia, thanks for being here. I will give you the floor.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. Yeah, so I'm Portia Anderson. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Interim Director of Housing and Support Services with Friends of the Youth, and I've been here about 4 years. For those of you that aren't familiar with Friends of Youth, we are based in King County, primarily serving North and East King County, but most of our programs don't have a specific geographic restriction outside of just generally serving King County. We serve youth under 24 years of age. I'll go through about half of our services serve under 18. And then for those of you that might have students that are over 18, I'll cover those services as well, just in case that's helpful. The first thing that I want that might be most applicable to youth who are experiencing homelessness is just highlighting our Safe Place program that we operate. So that's a 24-hour crisis hotline that primarily is able to serve 12 to 17 years old, but anybody who calls in, whether they're over or under that age range, will be connected to somebody that can appropriately assist them. That hotline is staffed 24 hours a day. You'll be connected to a case manager there who can assess what you're going through, provide outreach, referrals, and stay with you until you get connected to somewhere safe. If you if you haven't seen little signs, you might see those little yellow diamonds in a lot of businesses. Any King County library, metro buses, many of those local businesses, a lot of nonprofits, they'll have those signs. And youth can go in there and ask, you know, whoever's working at the library or the bus driver, and say, hey, I need Safe Place services. They will also know how to route youth to that 24-hour crisis hotline. And I'll drop all these numbers in the chat in a minute here, but you can text or call. So especially important for many young people. You do not have to make a phone call. You can text. It is a cell phone that they can chat back and forth that way if that's preferable. And similarly, one of the services that people may get connected to once they reach out to Safe Place, we have our youth engagement team. And I should specify, Safe Place could be for any youth. They don't specifically have to be experiencing homelessness. That's just generally a crisis hotline. Our youth engagement team is for youth under the age of 18 who are at risk of or are currently experiencing homelessness. So they could be on the verge of experiencing something, know they're experiencing something, maybe they're couch surfing, maybe they're staying with friends for a little bit. All of that would count. And they are able to connect with a case manager there who can provide therapy for them, can also provide family therapy and mediation. If they are maybe staying with a friend while stuff at home isn't so good, but maybe there's someone that can step in and help mediate what's going on at home, that's something that they provide. And then there is some limited financial assistance, legal assistance, and general care coordination, if that's helpful for the family. And again, I'll drop that number into the chat here. We have a youth shelter that serves ages 7 to 17. And that is Youth Haven. It is located in Kirkland. And most McKinney-Vento family coordinators, I think within the general King County area, would have this shelter number, but anybody is welcome to call it. If you know a youth that's needing shelter, you can call that and get connected. It is a smaller shelter, so I want to be clear that we can't take every youth that's you know, that calls in and needs a place to stay, but you will get connected to somebody who can help refer you if we don't have space in our shelter, trying to help coordinate and connect you with someone that does. For more supportive services that might be helpful for families, we have a Healthy Start that can support parents and guardians with the child under the age of 6. So you could have a young student, you know, under the age of 6 that's experiencing homelessness, and we could support their parents and guardians. Or if you have a student that may be a parent, you can provide basic supplies, parenting support. A lot of the program is focusing on that child-parent connection, developmental and health screenings, and then they also organize some group activities. So going to the Y, or you know, going to the park and doing like an art project together, trying to build up that network of natural supports. That one doesn't specifically require that the family is homeless, but a lot of the home visitors are very educated as far as supporting families that may be experiencing homelessness. So those home visitors can come to you or provide services virtually. We offer mental health and substance use services, so we can serve youth, young adults, and their families between the ages of 4 to 24. That can be individual counseling, family counseling. We also offer group sessions. If anybody is interested, I can send you out a one-pager. We have several like group counseling sessions going on through the summer right now, especially making sure that young people stay connected and have that support that they need during the summer. We know that that can be a gap if they relied on kind of their school network during the, September to June. Most insurances, including Medicaid, are accepted, plus a sliding fee or sliding scale fee if the family doesn't have insurance for whatever reason. Specifically within the Snoqualmie Valley School District, if anybody works out in that area, we're also kind of integrated into the school district there. So that can be an additional resource if you're out in the valley. For over 18, our services include a 24/7 shelter. And so they have drop-in services during the day, come in, get food, laundry, shower, hang out with case manager. We also have an employment case manager. So whatever that looks like, several services operate out of there, and then overnight shelter services. That's located in Redmond, but in September, we are moving to a much larger space located in Kirkland. And so that's exciting. We'll have several more beds than we have now. And then we have housing programs. And while that's beneficial for families, it is through the coordinated entry system that I'm sure most of you are aware of. So while we do have rapid rehousing, transitional housing, and supportive permanent housing, I can give you kind of an overview of those programs, but they do all require a referral through coordinated entry. So you would just follow that normal process there. I'm going to include, though, the contact information for our intake coordinator. She has an email and then a phone number that you can text or call. And so even if you want to refer a family to coordinated entry, but perhaps you have questions if this is an appropriate fit or resource for the family that you're working with or the young person that you're working with, you can give her a call and she's happy to field any questions or, if this isn't the right fit, kind of connect you to what may be a better resource. So it's a lot of information, a lot of phone numbers, and I've got a little contact sheet that I'm going to drop in the chat. In general, our website has a lot of this information. So if you don't save this now, you can go on our website and I'll put that in the chat as well. And most of it should be covered there. But I'll pause, and if there's any questions or anything I can follow up on.
Thank you, Portia. That's really great. And we'll include a lot of this into the blog as well. So including those links and some of that stuff you'll be dropping in. But yeah, we'll just pause in case there's questions for Portia.
I also just want to say thank you for everyone who's here. I think you had asked earlier about like what takeaways would you give to anyone working with students experiencing homelessness, and just thank you for being here and learning about what services are available to be a better advocate for our students. I think that's like the best thing that we're in the position to do is advocate and ensure that they're getting the support and education that they are completely deserving of, but it's often a complicated system to navigate and very easy to not get the support that that they are deserving of.
Well said. I could not agree more. Thank you for that. And I will just invite folks again to, if you're working in an agency and you know that you also have important and wonderful information and resources and services to share, even if you're not maybe the best person to share that information, you need to run that by a manager, reach out to Tim or I, and we will follow up on that, because much like Portia's saying, it's gonna take all of us knowing where all the corners of that can kind of wrap around students to make sure that they are really having the best educational experience and success in being set up to do that. So just another call out. We're happy to follow up if you don't feel like you're the right person to sort of actually share that, or that's not within your scope of work. Tim and I will take that on for you happily. Well, Portia, thank you for being here. I do believe you might have to run, so if questions come up, maybe we'll just follow up with you after the fact, but I appreciate you being here and popping on.
Absolutely. And my contact info is in the chat. You're welcome to reach out to me directly. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks.
And Sarah, thank you for holding on our order. I appreciate that. We have Sarah Berner, who is Youth Care's Director of Adolescent Services, here with us. So please, Sarah, take it away and share all your good knowledge with us.
Great. I am going to share screen. I'm hoping this works. Every now and then it does not. So let me see. Let's see here. I'm using a double screen today. So if that does not come up, please let me know.
You're good.
Okay.
Yep. So take it away.
All right. So I'm here to talk about youth care. Our mission is that we work to end homelessness and ensure that young people are valued for who they are and empowered to achieve their potential. We do that by focusing on several different points of support. So networks of support, community and relationship connections, employment and education, housing, and health and wellness. And our services include engagement and early intervention, case management, education and employment services, as well as housing. Let's see if it's going to change slides here. There we go. So I'll talk about our engagement centers first. We have 3 engagement centers: the Orion Center, University District Youth Center, and South Seattle Youth Center. The ages are 12 to 24 at Orion and UDYC, and then 18 to 24 at South Seattle. They provide hot meals, access to hygiene supplies and clothing, access to laundry and shower facilities, drop-in services and activities, case management, and this includes specialized case management through CaseARC, which is King County Sexual Assault Resource Center, and that is at the Orion Center. Access to medical care on site through partnership with Kaiser Permanente, and that's at 2 of the locations, Orion and South Seattle. Access to mental health and substance use disorders on site through partnership with Ryther, and access to legal supports on site through partnership with Legal Counsel for Youth and Children, also just known as LCYC. Education and employment services, both through our workforce navigation and then also in partnership with interagency and doorways projects. And then there's shelter beds as well at the South Seattle Youth Center. We provide centralized client services. This provides clients with a case manager who will be able to remain with them throughout their time in youth care, regardless of what programs they transition in and out of. We found that that really provides consistency. It avoids clients having to start over with someone new each time they move through our services. So those are broken up into 2 categories: our centralized case management and early intervention and specialized services. Our centralized case management provides comprehensive case management services. They're based out of the engagement centers, and they're kind of into 3 different categories: outreach, housing navigation, and engagement centers. So the outreach case managers go into the community. They connect with youth and young adults where they're at. They outreach to the community to let them know of our services, and then they also work with partner agencies in advocacy. Our housing navigation case managers connect clients to safe and stable housing, and that includes the administration of the coordinated entry for all assessment. And then our engagement center case managers provide comprehensive case management services to those that are accessing the engagement centers themselves. Our early intervention and specialized services is really a specialized portion of this centralized case management. They are case management services for youth between the ages of 12 and 24 and their families, where appropriate, who are experiencing or at risk of homelessness. These services include systems navigation, advocacy, family intervention and mediation, reentry support, eviction prevention, and school-based services. So we have a lot of different case managers under this. The transition case manager works with youth in the juvenile justice system. They provide assistance navigating the system and also reentry planning. Family engagement case managers work with youth and families to resolve family conflict, reunify families, and provide resources that youth and family needs. Student and youth resource navigators work within the interagency school sites to provide resources for youth and their families and to reduce barriers to school attendance and engagement. Our housing navigators connect youth with safe and stable housing. Housing specialists provide housing rental assistance, as well as eviction prevention and case management. And then we also have specialized services community advocates, and these are case managers who are specially trained to work with youth and young adults who have experienced labor and sex trafficking or sexual violence. We have a pretty big education and employment service model. Kind of lost my train of thought there, sorry. Our education employment services spread through the various locations in our agency. And education services may include partnerships with interagencies, such as the GED program at the Orion Center, bilingual school at Casa de los Amigos, as well as tutoring and assistance connecting to and navigating educational systems. Our employment services may be through specific employment programs run by Workforce Navigation or assistance through case management and housing programs with building resumes, applying for jobs, internships, providing work-appropriate clothing, and building job skills. So we have some very specific programs, our pre-employment services, TILE and Youth Grow. So TILE is a 4-week paid internship. Youth 16 to 24, they build resumes, they learn art skills. At the end of it, they sell a tile to the community and all the proceeds go back to that project. Then Youth Grow is a paid internship that's also in partnership with Interagency. So they also earn high school credit. 15 to 21 is the ages, and they learn to cultivate and harvest and market produce, work in a garden, learn about urban farm management. They learn to cook farm to table meals and donate additional produce to the Rainier Valley Food Bank and South Seattle Youth Center. And then we have sector-based training. Our customer service training program is our newest one. It's pretty amazing. They work on soft skills, youth ages 16 to 24 for 7 weeks, problem solving, active listening, adaptability, and then they learn how to use those skills within customer service-based industries. And then Youth Build is our 6-month construction pre-apprenticeship program, and that's for young adults 18 to 24 studying for their GED or diploma. And they build tiny houses for Lehigh, and then they also have the opportunity to earn industry certifications and college credits. And then there's follow-up for 9 months post-graduation with case management and employment support. And then there's also internships and employer engagement. So this is where we work with partner agencies to place youth in external internships and employment, and we offer support both to the client and the partner agency. And then our housing program. So we have shelters and housing, and I've broken it up into our adolescent programs, which is what most people working in the schools are going to see youth in, but we may also see youth who are over 18 and needing housing. So we have 3 adolescent housing programs, our adolescent shelter, which is 14 beds, our Pathways program, which is 1 bed within the adolescent shelter, and then Casa de los Amigos, which is 12 beds. So our adolescent shelter serves youth 12 to 17, about 21 to 30 day stay, so short-term stabilization while identifying long-term placement. They offer basic needs, in-house case management, in-house behavioral health therapist, education, employment support, life skills, connection to physical and mental health, care providers, referral to substance use disorder services, legal assistance through LCYC, connection to specialized services such as family engagement, community advocates, housing navigators, and then outings and activities. Our Pathways program does all of those same things, but it goes a little bit more in depth because youth are 16 to 17. They're starting to transition into young adulthood, and they're staying for 2 years or until they turn 18, whichever one comes first. So they go a little bit more in depth with the life skills curriculum, as well as support for independent living and referrals to over 18 housing services. And then our Casa de los Amigos program. This is for undocumented youth, and youth come in through the Office of Refugee and Resettlement. We provide stabilization while working on reunification with family and identification of a U.S. sponsor. So they, again, offer all those same services, but they also have an in-house bilingual school and additional specialized legal services and assistance with identifying a sponsor. The referral process for adolescent shelter is by phone, or for youth who are state dependent, that'll go through DCYF. And then for our pathways, we can provide an application upon request, send it out, and then staff send it back in, and we can look at the application and put them on our wait list. Casa de los Amigos doesn't have a referral process because these youth are coming from the Office of Refugee and Resettlement, so it's not an outside referral process in the community. For our over 18 services, South Seattle Shelter is 20 beds within the South Seattle Youth Center. They're about 90 days, 18 to 24 is the age range. And they provide beds within South Seattle Youth Center with access to shared bathrooms, laundries, meals through the center, case management, education, employment, life skills, and access to supported services. Our transitional housing programs are ages 18 to 21. Usually they're staying for about 18 months. They're going through CEA, Coordinated Entry for All, and they offer long-term housing while moving towards independent living. They're going to have shared housing with access to kitchen, bathroom, laundry, and common spaces, as well as in-house case management supportive services. So it just goes a little bit more in depth than the South Seattle Shelter because they're staying for 18 months versus 90 days. And then our community-based housing and rapid rehousing is ages 18 to 24. The referrals could go through CEA, or they could also be internal through our transitional housing programs. And what we're trying to do for them is provide housing support while transitioning to fully independent living. So we've got studio apartments with access to laundry facilities, case management, life skills, education, employment support. And then in rapid rehousing, they also provide rental support for up to 1 year. And I do have a lot of resources for contact, but I left them all on a sticky note in my office. So apologies. I will put my contact information in and our youth care website in there. And if you guys have any questions, please feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. We did have a question come in earlier. How much do the internship apprenticeships pay?
It really varies through programs. So it really just depends on the program. And I apologize, I cannot get this to stop sharing.
There should be somewhere maybe at the top a stop share button.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. It's on my second screen.
There you go.
Yes, I just have to get to it. There we are.
Yes, it's a
Apologies.
Not an insignificant source of anxiety for me when I have two screens, which is very helpful, but then like which one is navigating and controlling what I'm actually sharing?
And that's exactly what just happened to me. Yes. I'm not technologically savvy.
Mm-hmm. You're in good company, Sarah. You're in good company. I'm just going to pause for a second to see if there's any other questions coming through. We appreciate you throwing your contact in, and then if you easily get to that other contact information that you can share with Tim, we'll share that out as appropriate, as well as your beautiful slides if possible.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And I'm just going to go back and make sure I didn't miss any other questions. I don't think I did. Sarah, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
We are going to move on to Christy Wong, who is the Youth Program Manager for Candelia. So Christy, if you would please take it away, we would love to learn more. And please let me know if I've been mispronouncing the organization, because I feel like maybe I have.
No, I think you got it right. It's Candelia. I don't know. People say Candelia and Candelia, so I've heard both, and I don't think either are wrong. Hi, I'm Christy. I'm the Youth Program Manager for Candelia. Let me throw on our brochure. Alrighty. Cool. So Candelia doesn't really do specific work in with youth homelessness. We serve immigrant and refugees, youth and their families, primarily at Seattle World School, which is the Seattle Public School for newcomer immigrant and refugee students. So we provide after-school services at the school, focusing on just community building and English support. And then outside of the school, after COVID, all our family programs are now online. So families can register for English classes, computer classes, and just social connection classes. And then our other program is a food access program. So we offer weekly food bags at Seattle World School for students and families, but our programs are really open to any student in the Seattle Public School District. We just find that Seattle World School is the hub, and try to focus our resources there. But most of the time we're doing a lot of referrals to other organizations like the ones that are here. And we definitely work with a lot of students who are unaccompanied minors, a lot of students who are in the McKinney-Vento program. So we are well aware of all these programs, but we are mostly like a referral system for other programs. And if anyone has any questions about like serving immigrant and refugee youth and families, I think we're a pretty good resource for that, and we can help to connect folks to the other people doing similar work. But as far as like specific work in youth homelessness, we are not actively doing those things. We just are very aware of that is a very big thing within our population. But yeah, I think kind of that's all I have. And I'll put the brochure in, I think I can add it to the chat, and I'll send in our website link as well.
That's great. And what I will say is I think it's really important that you're here in the sense that we are hearing and have like, so previous to me being at the coalition, I worked at the Seattle King County Public Health Healthcare for the Homeless Network program. And for years now, sadly and unfortunately, we are hearing that there is a growing population of new immigrants, refugees that are also experiencing housing instability and homelessness. And so I think it's wonderful to make sure that we know that there's these very specific programs that serve that part of someone's identity, and that you are also connected to a lot of the folks that are here that are, you know, supporting this other side. We do have a question that says main groups of refugee families you serve.
Yeah, we serve, we kind of serve any refugee or immigrant family. But right now the main groups are Spanish speakers from South America. A lot of students are from Guatemala, Mexico, and then we still have a lot of students who speak Chinese, Vietnamese, East African languages, and we've seen a few kids come and go from Afghanistan and Ukraine as well. So we see everyone, but I would say the majority of the students that we serve right now are Spanish speakers from South America.
Great. And are there age limits to any of the services that Candelia offers?
Not really. Right now, the main priority is the main limit is just the Seattle Public School student, which the age cutoff is, I think, 21. Student, they can be up to age 21, and then if not, they can definitely enroll in our family programs and take English classes or computer classes online. Yeah, there's I think the best way for referrals are just to send us an email or send us a text, and I can scroll up over here and I can also leave this in the chat as well.
That would be great. And so it sounds like don't have to be a particular service provider or just a call-in to sort of see what a student might benefit from and what program they might access, and then kind of get information from there.
Yeah, if you know of a family who might need our support, I would say just like giving us their contact information is the best way. So we have some like multiple ways of reaching them. And we have people on staff who speak different languages and can figure out how to best communicate with them.
Great. Well, I'm really happy you're here. I think it's an important intersection that we're all learning more and more about, unfortunately. So you being here is great. We will absolutely add that program to our list of resources and the contact information for referring. So thank you, Christy, for being here. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah. And then last but certainly not least, we have Stacy Lappin, the Director of Programs from Belong Partners. Stacy, if you would love to take it away, we would love to hear all about Belong.
All right. Well, thanks for having me in this space. I just want to say that I am grateful to be with all these amazing organizations providing resources and direct support for young people and their families. And it was good learning for me to be in this space because our work is a little bit different. And so I'm excited to share what we do and how it might be of support to all of you, and also learn about the amazing work that's happening in the community. So I will start with, let's see, where is it? I have it open. We'll share too many things open on the screen. There we go. All right. So let's see. My name is Stacy Lappin, and I am the Director of Program at Belong Partners. And you may know our organization as Sound Discipline. We were formerly Sound Discipline, and we did a rebrand in May. So we are, I like to say we're the same organization doing the same amazing work, but we're pretty excited with our new name, which is Belong Partners, that allows us to have a name that more accurately lines up with the work we do. And Belong stands for Building Equitable Learning Opportunities and Nurturing Growth. So I'm excited to share with you a little bit about what we do, and also some ways I think that we can support you and the different spheres of influence that you have. First thing to let you know, at Belong Partners, we are building, our purpose is to build equitable communities that center dignity, voice, and agency of young people. And we're believing in a future where everyone thrives because they know they matter and belong. And we do this by partnering with schools and community organizations to transform the ways that adults teach, parent, and care for youth. So we don't work directly with the young people, but we know that if we want to create inclusive, equitable spaces where young people have a voice and know that they belong and matter, and really provide that network of support around young people, that we need to work with the grownups and provide them the tools and resources to be able to show up in ways that support young people, really through an asset lens and through a growth mindset. So the invitation for this presentation was to think about what are some things that would be helpful for all of you. 3 things if you're working with young people experiencing homelessness, which one of the things that we do in our organization is provide trauma responsive practice training. So one of the things that we would advocate is that how do all the grownups have tools to understand what does it mean to have a brain-informed approach to relationship? And oftentimes in schools and in different spaces where young people are interacting, we often swoop in at the space of, we got to teach you what you're supposed to be doing and how your behavior is not working at school and what you should do differently. And we know that that actually pushes kids out of the actual support and service that they need. And so we advocate for always providing opportunities for regulation and then connection, and then we can move to that reasoning or problem solving. So I'm going to share a few tools with you that will help you. Hopefully you can share that. There we go. And I'm going to stop sharing for a minute because I think it's easier if I demo this for you. So you may have heard how you could do a little show of hands. How many of you have heard of Brain in the Hand before? You can do your, okay. Yeah, there we go, some hands. Okay, so I'm just gonna briefly demo this. We invite you to teach this preschool to grandparents. It's really helpful to understand how our brains work because it takes some of the shame away of what happens when our brain is doing what it needs to do to survive. So this is the work based on the work of Daniel Siegel, and we're going to use our hand as a model of the brain. Even if your camera's not on, you can do it with me, because if you do it with me, you're more likely to remember it and be able to practice it with the young people you serve. So your palm is your, and down is your brainstem. That's the most basic part of your brain. That controls the things that you don't think about, like your heartbeat and your eyes blinking and your lungs working. You also have your most primitive freeze, fight, or flight responses there. Fold your thumb across. This represents your midbrain. In your midbrain, you have your emotions. You also have your memories, and you have your safety radar. Fold your fingers down. This whole thing represents your cortex. That's the thinking part of your brain. There's all different parts of your cortex, but this very front part where your fingernails are represents your prefrontal cortex. That's right behind your forehead there. And that is responsible for everything we think of as thinking or executive functioning, your ability to regulate your emotions, your ability to they say response flexibility, that means make a choice, the awareness of another person, empathy, all of those things live in your prefrontal cortex. Turns out it takes 25 years to grow that. So when you're working with young people, even at their best, they don't have an adult fully formed prefrontal cortex. They're working on growing that. We know from brain research that what happens when we get stressed or when we perceive we are stressed, what actually biologically happens is we flip our lid. We turn that prefrontal cortex on, and there's a biological reason for that. This working together thing takes a few more seconds. If you are in danger, you probably don't have those few more seconds. You need to turn that thinking part off and use your most basic freeze, fight, or flight to keep you safe. And sometimes young people who are experiencing trauma, which obviously experiencing homelessness is one of those categories, they're might over-perceive that sense of threat or danger. So their lid is flipped, and they aren't going to have access to their fully formed thinking brain. So one of the things that we can do is recognize that and teach that, right? Like, yep, every human being flips our lid. It doesn't mean that what we do in that moment is okay. I say these are my not finest moments as a parent or an educator, right? It comes out of my mouth and I can't stop it. But what can I do to calm back down? And also, how can I do regular practices to increase self-regulation muscles with young people? So we have some self-regulation cards. And Kayla, can you drop the link to those in the chat? So if you want to download those, print them out. We encourage people to print out the ring of 60 cards, little cards, and there's different self-regulation practices. You can share those with educators, you can share them with families, and you can share them with young people. So that brain-informed approach is really helpful. And oftentimes educators will do self-regulation practices when they notice that kids need it. And what we invite them to do is do it before they need it. So we're doing it regularly, 2 to 3 times an hour to build those self-regulation muscles up. So brain-informed approach is the first piece I wanted to share with you. Oops, let's see if it's going to let me go to the next slide. We call that space between your regulated best self and your lose it or your flipped self, your resilience window. And we know that for young people and adults who've experienced trauma, their baseline is higher. So that's why you might notice some of the young people or the families that you work with, it looks like they go from 0 to 60 like that. And the truth is they're not operating at 0. They're walking around at 45. It doesn't take much to go over and lose it. But they look normal, regular for them because they're used to operating on that higher stress level. The second strategy that I wanted to share when you are working with young people experiencing homelessness, and I heard several of the organizations talking about resources that you provide and mental health support and counseling and a network of support around young people. We know that resiliency comes from the deep belief that at one time you really mattered to another human being. And sometimes that human being is a parent, but oftentimes it's a mentor or a coach or an educator or a friend or someone else that gives a young person that message. And oftentimes you are those people, right? You are the person who knows their family. You're the person who shows up with the resources. And so how can you have some quick tools in your box to keep on showing up even when it's hard, to give them the sense of Doesn't mean we just let them do whatever. I think there can be a sense of like, we feel bad for kids who are experiencing homelessness and we just say, oh, sweetie, it's okay. It doesn't mean that, right? It means we show up in relationship with you. And even when we have to hold you accountable, we do it in a way that honors the relationship and values them as a human being and says, I care about you no matter what. That's what builds the resiliency for them to reach their potential. So quick tool for that. Just inviting you to see young people for who they are and with that strengths lens. And whoops, come on. We offer some tools. One is to use descriptive encouragement. So that's just to say, I notice. It's to be seen. You don't have to be super positive. It can be, I notice you are tired today. I noticed your backpack's not here, but it means I see you. It could also be, I noticed you stuck it out and really persevered on your math assignment today. So being able to see a young person and offer that descriptive encouragement, it's leaving off the good, better, best in judgment, but just seeing a young person so that you see them for who they are. Because oftentimes young people experiencing homelessness and traumatic experiences have a view of themselves that is less than. So how can we give them evidence of where we see their strengths and where we see them growing and learning? And then the second type of encouragement is appreciative, which is to share what you appreciate about that young person. And that's all of these. It's really important that is genuine. So not to manipulate behavior, but really to offer that genuine appreciation. And then the third piece that I wanted to talk about is to just sort of name that the problem or the misbehavior that you see on the outside that might not make sense to you, certainly might not make sense to the school principal or the teacher, is actually a solution to a different problem, something else that's going on underneath. So my third tip when you are working with young people and families who are experiencing homelessness is to have grace. Grace for the young people, grace for the families, grace for their educators, grace for yourself, because everybody is doing the best they can with the tools they have or the tools they have access to in the moment. So all the things that we know and practice and teach don't stay with us when our lid is flipped. So it's really important to just remember, sometimes even though we teach it and practice it, they don't have access to those tools in that moment. And how can we provide opportunities for them to fix mistakes, to heal the harm, and learn to do better? And one of the things that we talk about is that we aim to move from being not trauma aware to trauma aware. And it's not like I'm trauma aware or I'm not. There's a continuum, and we are moving toward being more relational. We are moving towards, instead of saying, what's wrong with you? What's your inner potential? Instead of having to do things the right way, we want to connect. So that is just an idea to think about. How do you in your practice, and then with all the sphere of community partners and educators that you work with, how can you support them to move towards being trauma aware? And along those lines, I'm going to put in the chat. Let's see. Sorry, I think I went over. You guys are done. You can reach out to Belong Partners or me directly. And then we also have, we do workshops for community partners and educators. So Kayla dropped 2 flyers. One just shows you all the different kinds of trainings that Belong Partners does that you may be interested in. And the other one is a coupon that's good for this whole year if you are interested in signing yourself or someone you know up for a workshop, where you can use that code and get $50 off of a workshop. And I apologize for going a little bit over.
It's okay, Stacy. You always have such great information to share, but we are over, and I do know that you'll all probably have places to be. So I'm going to throw the post-training survey in link into the chat again. Please fill that out, and then just a huge thanks to Kayla, Sammy, Tim, Lauren from Team Child, Maggie from Bright Spark, Portia Anderson from Friends of Youth, Sarah Berner from Youth Care, Christy Wong from Candelia, and then Stacy from Belong. We are really lucky to have everybody here and sharing these amazing resources. We will be in touch via email, and if you registered, you'll get a follow-up email from us. You can go to the YouTube probably by end of day, and you can see the recording and share that out with folks. Really thankful for you all to spend this time with us. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you
so much, everybody.